Is there a team in college football in 2021 that is more of a mystery team than Dan Mullen's Florida Gators? I'm talking about a big team. I'm talking about a team with a reputation, a brand, an image, a national reputation, a team that has achieved in the past, of course, and a team and a program that has money, facilities, and backing like the Florida Gators. They are the team for me that I can see going either way. No, they're not going to go 3-9. They may go 4-8. They've shown us that twice in the last 10 years, going 4-8 and 4-7. So that's not completely out of the question. It seems ridiculous to a certain extent, but this Florida Gators team, coming off what they showed us, the good was really good. The good was exceptional. The good was exceptional. The good was really good in 2020. The bad was embarrassing. The bad was beyond getting beat up on the field, because that never really happened. They never really looked horrible on the field until it became embarrassing with what Dan Mullen would describe, well, this is not the Florida Gators. So I would like to get your thoughts on what teams out there in college football are in an enigmatic state right now that we could see falling off one way or the other way, that we could see gaining some confidence and some people pulling through that are questionable right now, and things headed in the right direction, and there's enough talent there to break through. But there's also enough uncertainty. There's enough negativity in the program or on the team, or combined with a difficult schedule. It always depends on who you're playing, that they could run into a ditch. Michigan comes to mind, of course. Michigan comes to mind, of course, as well. All right, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Excuse me if I'm a bit distracted. I need to take care of some technical operational stuff right now, but welcome in for the next couple hours. We'll talk college football with you. You know what the deal is. You produce the show. I don't produce the show. I typically throw out a topic, and I looked at the Florida Gators in particular because I was checking out, as I typically do before I go on live, I will look at that particular team, or I will just do a Google search to make sure I'm not missing any relevant news or any storylines, narratives that are out there today. And for this particular day, I see that the Sporting News has released its top 25. And so I went to the Sporting News Top 25, and it's pretty much what we would expect it to be, although Florida's ranked rather high. So let's dive through and dive into the Sporting News Top 25. And we can start the show that way, and we can also, of course, take your calls. We're at 860-499-3332. I have sent out the link to a number of media members. We'll see if anybody stops by. I don't necessarily expect that, because I did it on late notice and just threw it out there as if any of our media guests, any of our friends out there that cover college football would like to stop by tonight. We do know that Kevin Mcguffey will be making an appearance at 8:45 Eastern time to talk Kentucky. Love Kentucky. Rooting for Kentucky. Why? I got to see something different this season. Somebody out there, give me some hope that something different is going to happen this season. Something different is going to happen. I don't know if we're going to have much of a channel this time next year for a number of reasons, but in particular, the college football season needs to deliver. The games are great. The best games are the games that are played by the teams that don't even show up in national championship contention. That's what we get each and every week in college football. This is both the great aspect of college football, but also the disappointing aspect of college football, is that when we come on here every Saturday night, late night, and I do the call-in show, and I talk to all of you, and we do our live stream, and we talk college football and review the day, there are tons of great games to talk about. Not so much this past season, of course, with all the cancellations and the truncated season. We had some sparse, thin Saturdays, but in a typical year when everybody's playing, the games are remarkable. The games, it is the best entertainment in sports. Watching a college football Saturday, that is the best entertainment available in sports. It's the best. But typically the games that we're talking about, aside from Alabama killed Tennessee by 4 touchdowns and they're number 1, and Ohio State's number 2, and they killed Rutgers by 6 touchdowns, are games between teams that are not going to factor into the outcome at the end of the year. They're playing the exciting games. If we would go through last college football season, if we would go through the last few years, we would see that most of the games, most of the best games of the college football season were played between teams that didn't factor into the championship race. There were some exceptions. Of course, Alabama-Florida was a good SEC championship game. It wasn't a great game. Alabama had that game in hand. The Big 12 championship game, well, neither one of those teams was going to go to the college football playoff. Clemson, Notre Dame played an exciting game in South Bend, but Clemson was still safe. Their playoff spot was still safe as long as they took care of Notre Dame the second time. And what happened to that game? That game was a dog. The 2 playoff games were dogs. The championship game, a dog. Most of the big matchups throughout the season didn't turn out to be great games. Alabama, Georgia was a tremendous game to watch with all that talent on the field for 3 quarters plus. But in the end, Alabama separated in the last 10 minutes and it did not go down to the wire. I'm just making the point that the entertainment value of college football is high, but that most of that entertainment value that's being brought to us each and every week is by the mid-tier. The upper echelon teams rarely play each other. That's a huge issue in this sport that I've gone over many times, and I've corrected it. If anyone would care to listen to me and implement these changes, we have on our platform right here, between all of us, we have fixed the sport when it comes to competitiveness and scheduling and a legitimate playoff system. We have fixed the sport, but of course we don't have the power. It's kind of like society right now. It's kind of like our democracy. The people that have the real answers, the people that are sensible about it and know the truth, those people unfortunately don't have the power. The people that have the power to wield the decisions that are going to invoke change and fairness across the board, those are the people that have agendas. All right. So we're talking college football with you for the next, I don't know, how long are we going tonight? You guys will decide that. All right. Appreciate everybody who's on the line. We wrapped up our Florida State show with Logan Robinson of Knoll Game Day. We didn't have much participation there. I apologize. We had to go early, and I knew that would compromise our audience, but it's on the Florida State channel. So for many of you that are used to catching our team-specific live streams here, keep in mind that those are now located, as we've announced a number of times, those are located on the team-specific channels. Nebraska Tuesday show, Ohio State and Florida State Wednesday shows, although we're doing Ohio State this Thursday, not a permanent scheduling change, but this Thursday, Oklahoma on Fridays, although Oklahoma is going to be Thursday this week, not a permanent scheduling change. And of course, Miami on Thursday evening as well. All right. You guys produced the show. The thunder is rumbling outside. It was a beautiful day today, and there was not a cloud in the sky up until the time that it got dark. So I didn't even know that there was a front moving in, because at the time that we still had the light of day, it was sunny and bright. And then a front must have just poured in here because the floodgates opened and we had just a ton of rain come down. We got double X buckets for life here. Good to see you, as well as David, of course. Nate the Great, good to see you as well. Our number is 860-499-3332. I will post it in just a second, but of course I want to hammer home the Amazon link that we have provided for all of you in the description section of all the videos. You will not see it in this current video right now because I have to place in the text after the video, and I will do that, but you can go to any video on the channel, grab the Amazon link, put it somewhere where you'll remember it when you shop at Amazon, which 160 million Americans do every month. If I remember any stat from college football season this past year, that's going to be my main stat that I'm going to remember. There are 160 million Americans on Amazon, purchasing on Amazon every month. So that's half the country. So if I look at half of my viewership, and if half of them use the Amazon link, then we will be able to sustain this thing and make it work. Nate's great to see you, man. We got H-Man 998. Florida showed you what they have this year in the bowl game versus Oklahoma. Well, I understand your point. They will certainly be able to supplement those players with better players and with more work in the offseason to prepare for an actual season rather than guys just scrambling in roles and on the first team offense that had never been in that position before. So I get your point, but we're not going to see Florida losing by 5 touchdowns to decent teams in the SEC. So the equivalent of last year's Oklahoma team, Georgia, I don't think we're going to see Georgia beat Florida by 5 touchdowns, but I get your point, and that's one of the reasons why I am citing Florida as being overrated by the Sporting News at number 8 in the country. That was an 8 with an 8 and nothing in front or behind it, an 8, number 8 in the country. And for me, they're about the 25th best team in the country. That's what I had them in there in the way too early Voice of College Football Top 25. Good to see you, Nate. Hi, Cheryl. You can moderate if you'd like tonight, or you can just take it easy. Just kick back and enjoy. Just talk to the folks in the live stream. Hey, Sue, good to see you. Sue was going to say Michigan, but you beat me to it. How about Wisconsin? Wisconsin overrated? I think Wisconsin's going to be fine this year. Wisconsin only rated number 18 by the Sporting News. I have Wisconsin higher than that right now. I think that Kentucky's a team that can beat Florida this year. I think that I have a better read on Kentucky football and who they're going to be this year, even though they've got a new starting quarterback in Joey Gatewood. So both teams have a starting quarterback that we really have yet to see, although Emory Jones has played more than Joey Gatewood. Double X Buckets for Life. Double X is telling us Florida will be a great team, but they won't be like they were last season with Kyle Pitts. Great. Double X Buckets, you might want to interpret or define great for us. Hey, Brian. Good to see you. Brian's ready to go. Hi, everyone. Cool. Fire. Cool. Fire. I was just trying to make sense of that, Brian. Cheryl got her second vaccination. Good for you. H-Man is telling us that Kentucky could possibly finish second in the East. Mizzou will also be a team to watch. That's what I keep hearing. Missouri lost more talent to the NFL draft than they typically do. Offensive linemen, defense primarily in the front 7, and of course Larry Roundtree at running back. So I'm not totally understanding the Mizzou thought process. I'm going to have to look a little bit deeper into Missouri, because I've heard that not just from you. So I've heard that out there. People like Missouri. And we got Alabama football fan roll tide. Hey, Cheryl, thank you so much for that. It was a great weekend, and I am very proud of my daughter as well. Thank you. Shanktopotamus, Mark, do you believe the Georgia hype? Is Georgia one of the 5 best teams in the country? They should be. They have arguably the most talented roster. I still believe Alabama's probably got a little bit more talent now that George Pickens, especially their best wide receiver, is out for the season. So do I believe the hype? Georgia could be exactly what they've been through these years. And for most people, that means that we don't believe the hype because they have failed to meet expectations, which is winning a national championship. But Georgia's been one of the 5 best teams in the country every year since 2017. I don't care what the ranking is at the end of the year, and it's typically been right in that range. Georgia's been one of the top 5 teams in the country now for 4 consecutive years. So whatever the hype's been in the past, they've played top 5 football. And that doesn't win you championships because you've got to be number 1 to win a championship, or number 1 in the conference, which they've accomplished once. Fred is saying you always think Kentucky will beat Florida. I'd have to go back at my prediction record. We could pull up the video if you want to look up those videos and see if I picked Kentucky to beat Florida. We're talking in May. It's May right now, Fred. It is May, and I just made the statement that Kentucky has a definite, reasonable chance of beating Florida. I'm guessing. Well, I'm really not guessing. I'm basically telling you that there's no question over the last number of years that I have picked Florida to beat Kentucky more times than I've picked Kentucky to beat Florida. So the always is just slightly off by about 70 to 80%. So you're about 20% correct. I bet I pick Kentucky to beat Florida about 20% of the time. You probably want to say Criminals will beat Gators. I'm a Gators fan. I think Gators lose 2 games this season. That would be a nice little season for you, Fred. And I would not be surprised if Florida was able to win 10 games because the out-of-conference schedule is awful. So there's 4 automatic wins for the most part right there, unless Florida State really gets their act together unexpectedly. Then the 3 teams that I would consider right now to be better than Florida on the schedule, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Florida could certainly win one of those games and beat everybody else. They could win 10. Oh, Quan Lee's in the fold for the Miami Hurricanes. So we will talk about that tomorrow. Miami fans and everybody else, listen up. We've got 2 Miami live streams tomorrow for you on the Miami channel. Canes live at 5, Canes live at 7 Eastern. So we'll talk about Quan Lee, of course. Alabama football fan, roll tide. Like that comment right there. Hit the like button. Share the videos out on social media. We will succeed at this channel, not because of me, but because of you. So please share the videos out on social media. Either share the links to say, hey, we're live. Send them out there to Twitter, to Facebook, and other platforms that I probably have no idea exist. And then just in general, Tell your friends. We're talking college football every day. Shanktopotamus. Eli Drinkwitz was a Boise State offensive coordinator. How will he, I guess that would be, do with the SEC? Missouri put up a ton of points last year. They played Mississippi State in a shootout. They scored a ton of points in that game. They put up a ton of points in beating LSU. I don't have the scores in front of me, but Missouri, they had no issues scoring last year. So Eli Drinkwitz is off to a good start at Missouri. Only 5-5 in the win-loss column last year, but the scoring was not an issue for Missouri football. Now they only scored 12. That would have been the first or second game against Tennessee. And you would expect that, especially for a college quarterback, that the improvement from week one or from year one to year two would be prominent. And for Connor Basilick, he's moving from year one to year two. And just think about that. If you're a first-time starting college quarterback, maybe you received all sorts of reps in practice. You worked against scout teams. You worked against the actual ones and twos on the other side of the football, which is significant. It's real football. But they've watered down these practices so much in regards to contact, especially when it comes to the quarterback position, that you get a lot of work in, you get a lot of reps. You're in the weight room, you're in the film room. But to experience an SEC season, as Connor Basilick did last year, now, then to take that experience over the course of 10 games, and it was not a stellar, scintillating 10 games for Connor Basilick, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions off the top of my head. Then he goes into the offseason, and you've got right out of the gate, right when they come back from Christmas break, they go into conditioning. They have individual workouts. They're working out as a team. The early enrollees come in. They're getting some reps in. They're practicing. Then they take some time off. They go into spring practice. He's got the entire spring practice, spring game. They go into summer individual workouts. If he is a quarterback in a major school like Missouri, he's working with those wideouts constantly. And then he steps foot back on the field the first day of August, and he's got 4 weeks to prepare for the first game of the season, pushing 5 weeks to prepare. And he can take all that experience from last season as a first-time starter and then work on everything that he did wrong, both physically and mentally, and prepare for the next season. And bam, that improvement should be significant. I do, Reasonable Gump. I realize that. There's still somebody calling me. So I do realize that. Yes. Thank you, Reasonable Gump. The number is not to be found. The number that we've got, though, or the message, is to shop Amazon using the link in the description section. Yes, I will get the number out there. I've mentioned it a few times, but yes, it should be displayed. Thank you for producing the show. All right. I believe we've got DeAndre on the line. What's going on tonight?
What's up, Mark? How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I got a few questions for you. So I was going back looking at like scheduling back in the day, and I noticed back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s, USC used to play like real big games. I know we talked about this before, like with them playing Alabama one year, Missouri and Nebraska. Then somewhere down the line, had to play Notre Dame in the same year. And I was wondering, did college expansion hurt, in your opinion, did college expansion hurt scheduling?
It's a good question.
Can you hear me, Mark?
Oh, I can hear you. I'm just contemplating your question because I don't really have an answer for you off the top of my head because, see, this is what I'm going to say. Here's my answer. Give me about 10 seconds to think back to the mid 80s and that time period. So this is my answer for you. I don't necessarily know that it hurt the schedules for the teams that are in conferences and were in conferences, because they were basically playing the same format. They were playing an 8 or 9 game conference schedule. They were actually at that point playing one less regular season games. So they were only playing 11 regular season games. So they only had 2 or 3 non-conference games. And it wasn't like that they were always playing these phenomenal teams. So I don't know that it impacted it as much for the teams that were in conferences then and are still in conferences. What may be a huge difference for the fan is that, think about this, 30 years ago, Miami, South Carolina, Florida State, Louisville, Penn State, Syracuse, Boston College, and I could go on, were independents. So they were always playing each other. They were playing each other. And of course, they played teams that were in conferences. But once those teams got done without a conference play in September, those conferences, even more so than today, were just playing in silos against each other. And all those independent teams still had to look for opponents. So they were all playing each other all year, West Virginia and Pitt included. And I just think it made for better games across college football because they were playing tough schedules, playing each other constantly.
Right. And the reason why I bring that up, too, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but I think from 1981 and 1990, Alabama and Penn State played every year, I believe. I could have been wrong, but
what dates did you go with? 81 to 90?
Yeah.
That sounds about right. They played a lot. I know that they played. Ironically, it would be my guess, because I probably watched almost every one of those games, that Penn State beat Alabama more than Alabama beat Penn State. That would be my guess, just in that stretch run. But the year Penn State won a national championship in 1982, they lost to Alabama by 3 touchdowns in Birmingham. And I still recall that game, I'm almost certain that game was not on national television. And here are 2 of the top teams in the country, and everybody's kind of looking around, watching other games, thinking, because it was like this really tight game, and then all of a sudden Alabama scored 3 touchdowns and the game was over. It was like, what happened? Well, nobody got to see the game. I'll go through that and see, but that sounds right.
Yeah, because it is something that had caught my eye, and I didn't know I thought about Southern Cal. Like, I didn't know Southern Cal and Georgia Tech used to go back and forth playing each other. I'm like, why would that? Seems so odd that Southern Cal would go all the way out to Georgia to play Georgia Tech, and but Southern Cal played a lot of teams in the South. Maybe because a lot of their players outside of coming from the Los Angeles area maybe came from the South too, because they also played Clemson and South Carolina. And Clemson and UCLA, or I don't think UCLA and South Carolina's ever played each other. So it was just kind of funny seeing some of those schedules back in the day. And I was wondering, did the conference realignment hurt some of those games? So that was my first question. Second question, DeMarcus Russell, in your opinion, was he the best thrower of the football in college? Not the type of player he was in the pros, but just the thrower of the football.
At the time that he came out, or ever?
I think the analyst said ever.
So my answer is going to be twofold. My answer is basically no. The bottom line is going to be no because of this. If you're just talking about throwing the ball, launching the ball a distance, and you're talking about velocity on the football, then I will go along with your case, and I will say that he could be argued as the greatest thrower of the football of all time. launching the ball deep,
Right.
and then also just putting velocity on it. But and it wasn't as though he wasn't an accurate passer in college. It wasn't extraordinary. He wasn't Drew Brees-esque, but it was good enough. And but once you start to talk about throwing the football, and let's include touch, let's include anticipation and those things, that's where he faltered. In addition to not being a student of the game and not putting the kind of effort and focus into it that it was needed at the next level.
Right. Well, I agree with that, but he did better. The reason why I asked that question, a lot of people are comparing DeMarcus Russell and DJ Uiagalelei to each other, and I saw some of the analysts talk about that, and it was like DeMarcus Russell is probably the best thrower of the football there is. But when I watch DJ play, I think DJ moves a lot better. I know y'all say he was. I think I heard. I don't know, it was you or somebody on one of your shows that DJ was much of a runner. But I'm like, look at that Boston College game. He runs. He doesn't run with a long stride like Trevor, but he can run the ball. And it's gonna be hard to tackle him. And that's how he got hurt. Because I was asking why they didn't run him against Notre Dame that much. He got hurt during that Georgia Tech game when it beat on 7-3-7. He was, close to put him in for a lot of plays, and he was just kind of doing a Tim Tebow thing with Trevor, but he ended up getting hurt on that Georgia Tech game. But it was, I was listening to some guys, NFL analysts say that DJ probably has the best arm since DeMarcus Russell, and the guy was saying DeMarcus Russell probably had the best arm ever in college football. So that's why I was asking that question. Last comment, a quote. So I listened to the gentleman that was talking about LSU football, and he said that LSU probably had the best defensive line this coming up year. And you have brought up that a lot of Clipper fans are going to have problems with it. And I ain't going to lie to you, I don't know LSU's roster like that. I ain't going to sit up here and pretend. However, I would like to point this out, though. I think Notre Dame put 47 points on Clemson in double overtime, and Ohio State put 42 points on Clemson. So, and close to that Notre Dame game,
49 to be precise.
3 starters.
Keep going.
Okay, 49 to 28, yeah. So, they wouldn't look good. But my point to the whole conversation was, I went back and looked at LSU's games last year. They gave up 44 to Mississippi State, who was just starting their offense. I don't know if anybody opted out, but their defensive line was that good, or supposed to be that good this year. Where did we see that at? They gave up a lot of points to Missouri. They gave up a lot of points to a whole bunch of teams last year.
Auburn scored 48. Missouri, I think, scored 49. Auburn scored 48. Ole Miss scored 48. Alabama scored 56? 55?
Right.
Yep. That's a lot.
So, did they have a lot of opt-outs?
Yeah,
that's what I point when I heard it. No, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that's a lot of points. I'm not the person that's going to say, okay, your defensive line sucks because you gave up 50 points. You need to watch the game and go through the whole thing. But we're talking about, we just mentioned like 5 or 6 games. We just mentioned more than half the schedule. They got toasted. And the defensive line's where it all starts on defense. So, yeah, to your point, I think they have a very talented defensive line. Without really taking a deep dive into it, I'm almost positive that Clemson has a better defensive line. And I believe that I would have to look at LSU's defensive line against Georgia's, Alabama's, Ohio State's. Trying to think of anybody else who's going to have a superior defensive front this year to that level. That's probably the list.
Oh, Texas A&M, maybe?
Texas A&M. Yeah, good point. Yep. Texas A&M.
But that's what I was saying. Like I said, I haven't really went and looked at their roster. But my point is, if you go back and look at Clemson, I brought this up before, they was playing without a healthy. They didn't play with Foster. Randolph left the team. Xavier Thomas was in and out the lineup. Tyler Davis was hurt most of the year. And the only two teams to score more points than that was that many points against us was I can't think of the name. Notre Dame and Ohio State. And like I said, the Notre Dame game, most of the defensive players were missing. And then, the next time go around, they went out and, pretty much, I ain't going to say the short Notre Dame, but the game wasn't close. I think they almost scored with 10 or 17 points with the starters back that they were missing, including their middle linebacker. Even if we go back to the Boston College game, I think Boston College might have scored 28 points. But one was from a fumble. Yeah, Kendrick got burnt a whole bunch, but they were still missing Tyler Davis and Skowski that game. And I don't think the kid that transferred to LSU played that game. So my point is, I'm not saying he's wrong because, like I said, I haven't looked at LSU roster. But my point is, by what we saw last year on the field, and that most of Clemson defensive line were freshmen and sophomores, and they didn't lose anybody outside the two guys that were career backups that transferred to Minnesota and Virginia Tech. I mean, Clemson is loaded, and they're getting those guys back that are healthy that struggled last year. They don't have nothing to do that, that Ohio State put 49 points on Clemson because some of those guys played that were out that game throughout the year outside of Xavier Thomas and Foster. So, and not saying they would have made a big difference. But, I just listened to his comments and I went and looked at the score. I said, maybe I'm missing something because you would at least have seen the potential for that comment that he made. Now, if you tell me Ohio State is going to have one of the best defensive lines in the country, I could agree to that because I didn't see that coming out, but Ohio State defensive line did the Clemson defensive line up the middle, offensive line up the middle. Notre Dame, I heard they recruited well. Alabama, of course, and Georgia, of course. But yeah, I just didn't see where he was coming from with that point.
Well, this is where he was coming from, DeAndre. Basically, Lon does a great job. That's why I bring him on here. This is the way he does a great job is that he makes a lot of contacts with a number of LSU people. He gets players on his platform and is able to interview a ton of players, both current, former players, and recruits and their parents. And he's got a lot of insider information and gets a lot of good scoops on things. But when it comes to evaluating LSU play on the field, he thinks LSU has the greatest everything. So basically he thinks they've got the best unit in college football in every department. So that's just how, he's a fan and he loves LSU and he just overrates LSU highly. There's no question about that. And I've told him that.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not knocking him. I mean, maybe, like I said, I didn't follow LSU that closely. I said, maybe he had a lot of opt-outs that I didn't realize they had or something like that. That was my viewpoint. I said, maybe I need to go look at this team and see what he's talking about. But then when I looked at the scores, and you go look at Clemson, who played Miami and Notre Dame, who had high power offenses, outside of that game against Ohio State, Clemson pretty much shut down everybody that they played. Go look at Wake Forest. Hartman had been a starter before, and you had Surratt and you had King and those receivers and tight end down there, and they shut them down. So, the only reason why Miami got 17 points was because of block kick. So, that's why I was saying, I just don't see it. And not a knock at LSU. They're a great program. I just don't see it. I know how good Ed Orgeron is as a recruiter and a defensive line coach, but when he made that comment, I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. Clemson only had freshmen and sophomores playing last year.
I got you, DeAndre.
Two guys that are super seniors.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, Mark.
Well, thanks for calling. Appreciate it.
Mark. Take care.
Talk to you soon. All right. We've unfortunately had Reasonable Gump on the line here for quite some time, waiting for that call to end. We also have Kevin Mcguffey on the line from Last Word on College Football. Had him scheduled at 8:45. So we'll go to Kevin as soon as I address the comment on the screen. So basically, what happened was somebody in particular said that I always pick Kentucky to beat Florida. I clarified that if you went back to each season and looked at my predictions, that I guarantee that over the last 5 years, 10 years, that I have predicted Florida to beat Kentucky 70 to 80% of the time easily. So I was just clarifying that I don't always pick Kentucky to beat Florida. That is ridiculous. And so here, Keaton took exception to me. To quote Keaton, Mark, you don't have to wipe people off the face of the planet like that. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, if picking Kentucky always means I pick them 20 to 30% of the time to beat Florida, then yes, that must mean always. All right. We will talk some Kentucky football. Good timing, folks. We've got Kevin Mcguffey on the line from Last Word on College Football to discuss the Cats. Kevin, how you doing today? I always pick Kentucky to beat Florida. Kevin, do we have you?
Can you hear?
There you are. How you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We've got you.
Okay, sorry. I was like, I just saw this quote pop up, and I'm like, okay, what have I just missed? Because I was doing some other things and getting ready to hop on with you, and it says, "Don't wipe the people off the face of the planet." I'm like, okay, what's Mark said now? What's he done? So anyway.
That's typically my style, Kevin, wiping people off the face of the planet. But I appreciate that. If I appear to be condescending, I apologize. I don't want to be that. I just want to be accurate. I just want to be accurate.
I totally understand. And you know what? As the Kentucky guy, I don't pick Kentucky to beat Florida, 8 times out of 10. I did 2019, I did pick them, and maybe 2017, but no. Other than that, now, but I might do it this year. So,
I might as well. Where's the game being played this year?
It's up here. It's in Lexington this year.
Okay,
all right. Kentucky will be trying to beat Florida at home for the first time since 1986. Which, showing my age, I was a junior in high school when the last time that happened. So there you go.
That is one of the ridiculous streaks in college football that, of course, ended in terms of the entire series after a 31-game losing streak. Yeah. They did get the win in Gainesville a couple of years ago. And
one of the most surprising wins ever, because literally I think no one gave Kentucky a chance, and they just went in. Terry Wilson and his first SEC game. You go in and you win at Florida, so. Nowhere to go, but down, I guess you could say after that. But yeah, I mean, as you said, it's one of the craziest streaks. You think about it. Kentucky had 2 of those. Went 26 straight years losing to Tennessee before finally beating them in 2011, and now Kentucky's won, twice in the last 4 years. So that obviously is some progress. Now we just have to work on that Florida streak. So.
Yeah, so that was the 2018 team that went to Gainesville, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That was the team that finished in the top 10 in the country, went 10-3.
Yep.
10 and then it was the team. Then it was the team the next year that had a nice lead against Florida at home. The game Felipe Franks was hurt, and Kyle Trask came in and led the comeback.
Yep, and that's if you go back through the history, I wrote actually one of the more I think popular posts I ever did for Last Word on College Football. I did, and as a Kentucky fan, it was agonizing. I did a countdown of like Kentucky's 5 worst losses to Florida, and you think about it, since Mark Stoops has been there, you could probably put 3 of those in there, because you have the 2014 game, the triple overtime game, where Florida got an extra play on a missed delay game, and then they scored, and then won in the next overtime. And then 2015, 2017, Kentucky had chances to win and just couldn't pull it out. And as you said, 2 years ago, we just call it the Kyle Trask game now, and where he came off the bench after Franks got hurt, and just and that's another thing that's happened to Kentucky over the years is they have always had this amazing talent of making a backup quarterback look like Tom Brady.
All right, got Kevin Mcguffey on the line from Last Word on College Football, so check out his work. And you guys that watch me on a regular basis know that we get a ton of contribution from the Last Word on College Football guys. Jason Ray and I have been doing an Oklahoma segment every Friday that we actually moved to a live stream that's been pretty successful for the last few weeks. So it's great to have Jason here. And of course, Tony Siragusa, especially anytime I get into Pac-12 deep waters on some situation out there where they're switching commissioners or whatever they're doing, Tony's got the lay of the land on the Pac-12 like nobody. He's got that locked down.
And if you look at the site right now, I mean, Tony, I'm not saying this because he's my boss, but I mean, he's really just been killing it with content. I mean, he was all over the Pac-12 new commissioner, and a lot of great stuff about the Pac-12 and with UCLA. As you said, Jason does a great job covering Oklahoma. He always comes up with these new ways, I think, of fun ways of talking about one of the historically best programs in the country. And then I think obviously this year is going to be another big year for them as well. And I think Kentucky's going to have a big year this year. So we at least have that in common. So
yeah, it could be a great year for the Cats. Not so much a great run here on the recruiting trail regarding the top target, Gavin Winsett. So we're talking about the third-rated dual-threat quarterback in the country. Like, this kid can play. He's right there in Owensboro, Kentucky. So he is not chosen to go to Alabama, Tennessee, some of the candidates that you would figure in that part of the country, and also the big players based on that usually get the top 10 players at all the positions. Gavin Winsett has chosen, and it's not National Signing Day yet. He may change his mind, but right now the commitment is to Rutgers.
Yep. I came on here and I said I thought eventually that he would choose Kentucky. I really thought this process would drag on a while, get some time to meet the new quarterback, the new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, kind of see how things go, because, Kentucky's promising the more wide open kind of a pro style offense this year. And I thought given some time that he would, Kentucky, Vince Marrow, Cohen might be able to work their magic, but so far, it didn't happen. And he went on and he chose Rutgers. And honestly, that's what most people expected. But as you said, anything can happen in recruiting, and it's a long time between now and next September. I'm not saying Kentucky's going to flip him, but if you look at the recruiting, what Rutgers has done. I mean, they're up in like the top 10. The last I saw, they were like 6th or 7th or something. So, like I said, I never understood what it was with Rutgers, but that was always being, that was always considered his leader. So, like I said, you can't win them all, but if you look at Kentucky, they're doing pretty dang well so far in 2022, even missing out on Winsett. Right now, they're, I think, 9th. Their recruiting class is 9th by Rivals and 11th by 247 Sports. And a lot of people around the program think this is going to be Stoops' best recruiting class ever when it's all said and done, assuming they hold on to all these guys. The 2014 class was really something big, the 2016 class, and they think that's going to be something pretty similar. So they, like I said, losing on Winsett is tough, because Kentucky, you and I have talked about this before, over the last few years, Kentucky has done a really good job of keeping the best players in the state going to Kentucky. And so, this one hurts, especially, a quarterback of that caliber. As we know, Kentucky hasn't had the best luck for whatever reason with quarterbacks, recruiting wise the last few years, but they'll get guys and then they end up leaving. Then you go back to Patrick Tolles, Drew Barker, all these guys who were highly touted that came in and then ended up going somewhere else. But like I said, but they have, and just kind of changing topics. That's still going to be the biggest thing for Kentucky going into the fall is the quarterback situation. Basically, you got three guys. You've got Joey Gatewood, you've got Bo Allen, and you've got Will Levis, who just transferred from Penn State, and he's on campus now. And there's a lot of people that think that when they kick it off on September 4th, that Levis will be the starter. But there's a lot of time between now and then, and a lot of work. And as we know, as longtime Kentucky fans know, anything is possible. Anything can happen. You look at 2 years ago, Jerry Wilson gets hurt, Sawyer Smith gets hurt. They had to put Lynn Bowden, who was a high school quarterback, put him at quarterback, and basically Bowden left, Bowden right, Bowden up the middle, and occasionally throw the ball. And, it worked for that season. It was just amazing that everybody knew what Kentucky was going to do, and they still couldn't, for the most part, defenses still couldn't stop them.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch. There's no question about that, especially in that bowl game where he just took it over and just had some remarkable statistical lines earlier in the season as well. And a guy that I believe still led the team in receiving, even though he didn't play receiver after about the fourth week. Right.
Yeah. I think he had like 30 catches in 4 or 5 games. And then, he even after those last 8 games, he still led by maybe even 10 receptions, maybe over Josh Ali or somebody. I can't remember who the second place guy was, but it was just, and he won the Paul Hornung Award that year for the most, versatile player in college football. And it was totally deserved. So, but it's the last time you and I we talked about the quarterbacks, and that's still going to be, the thing, because we didn't get to see any really a spring practice. They didn't have a spring football game. They had a scrimmage where I guess they invited they found out later they invited like some boosters or higher paying, fans to come in and watch it, just a very, very small group. So you just basically had to rely on what the coaches told you, what was going on. So now we got to wait till August and July and then hopefully actually get to see some of these guys out on the field practicing.
Based on Joey Gatewood's status as a high school player and all the fanfare that he received going to Auburn, and based on what I've seen of Will Levis, I'm not making a negative spin on that. I just thought that Joey Gatewood was going to be the guy, and he may well turn out to be the guy, but I didn't expect the battle to go this deep. And if anything, I think the amount of playing time that Gatewood received sporadically and that Will Levis received is roughly the same, but I would guess that Levis actually played some more meaningful reps. There were some times that Sean Clifford was knocked out of the game, that Will Levis had to step in against some quality opponents, Ohio State being one of them 2 years ago. And then also just because of what he brought to the offense, they would stick him in there for his running ability as a changeup. A number of times as not necessarily the starter faltering, but it was just a strategy and predetermined that he would get certain series during the games.
Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And honestly, this is just my opinion. I think if Eddie Gran was still here as Kentucky's offensive coordinator, he always seemed to migrate towards those dual threat guys. I think if he was still here, I think Gatewood would be the starter, no question. But he's gone. He was relieved of duties after this past season. And like I said, I think Levis is obviously a dual threat quarterback too. So, there's some that think the pro style offense favors Bo Allen. So, like I said, it's going to be very interesting. I think you could see those first couple of games, especially that first game, the Louisiana Monroe game. I could see, all three quarterbacks playing. And then, it may be one of those, you just kind of play it out as it goes. And it could be one of those things, as you just talked about with Levis, you might have, like for these 4 series of downs, Gatewood's going to play. This series of downs, Allen's going to play. and then maybe you just stick with who the hot hand is. I know a lot of people don't like that. It's like, okay, pick a guy and you stick with him. So, like I said, it's an all new thing with Cohen and his offense. And we haven't, if you've watched the LA Rams, you know what you're kind of getting. That it's they're not going to totally forget about the run game. Cohen has said that Chris Rodriguez is going to get at least 25 touches a game, whether that's rushes, maybe some passing out of the backfield. And I look for them also to really focus on the tight ends too, which has been a major source of frustration with Kentucky fans over the years. You'd have C.J. Conrad, who would have one game where he catches 3 touchdowns and then he doesn't catch a pass for the next 5 games. But in Justin Rigg and Keaton Upshaw, you've got 2 really good tight ends. And you got to talk about the wide receivers. Wan'Dale Robinson transferring in from Nebraska, coming back home. And then we talked about Josh Ali. He took advantage of the NCAA giving an extra year for players. He's a senior, but everybody got that chance to come back and play another year, and he took advantage of it. And I think I don't think Kentucky's not going to abandon the running game, but I think you're going to see a lot of downfield passing, and which Kentucky's been successful with this style of play, but it's not very fan friendly. Running, Chris Rodriguez or whoever, Benny Snell running for 150 yards, and then you throw for like 20 yards. I mean, obviously the main objective is to win the game, but from a fan perspective, it's like, okay, they want a little more excitement, but do you take the wins or you take the excitement? So
we'll deliver for everyone a little off the field excitement. So everybody seems to be picking on Michigan football these days. I don't think they need anybody else piling on, but Vince Morrow, the associate head coach, he took his shot at the Michigan program to a certain extent. Explain the context of the comments that Coach Morrow made.
Okay, so here's for the context, everyone. Here's what happened. Steve Clinkscale, who has been Kentucky's defensive backs coach for the last 3-4 years, and has done an incredible job. You think about what Kentucky's defensive backs have done. They've had 6 guys drafted over the last few years. You think about Mike Edwards, just won a Super Bowl down there with Tampa Bay, played a lot of significant minutes. Lonnie Johnson down in Houston, and now Kelvin Joseph comes in, plays one season or most of one season, and then gets drafted in the second round by Dallas. Anyway, so Coach Clinkscale also has been Kentucky's biggest recruiter in the state of Michigan. You look at Justin Rogers, Marquand McCall. Kentucky has been going into Michigan and getting a lot of these top players, and obviously the Michigan folks don't like it. So Michigan State had offered him a position, and he turned him down. And then Michigan had offered him a job, and so he left Kentucky, took that job. He's going to be their defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator, and then a chance to become co-defensive coordinator. So from a Kentucky standpoint, that's a loss because 2 places where Clinkscale was the heavy recruiter was Michigan, and now we're making inroads in Tennessee. If you look at Kentucky's commitments to the Wade twins just outside of Nashville, those were Coach Clinkscale prospects. Anyway, so getting back to the point, sorry, I'm just setting us up. So appearing on Kentucky Sports Radio, with Matt Jones, Vince Morrow was on there, and he was asked about it, and his I had to pull it up here. His exact quote was, he said, where is it? So first of all, nothing against Coach Klink. I love him. He's going to Michigan. That's fine. But come on, I think we're a better program than them right now. Not I think. He says, I know we are. So, and then that obviously did not sit well with Michigan fans. And of course, historically, Kentucky is nowhere near the status of Michigan. But if you go and look it up, like just take it over the last 5 years, Kentucky's been to 5 straight bowl games, won the last 3. Kentucky since 2018 is 23-14 and 3-0 bowl games. Michigan's 21-11 with an 0-2 bowl record. So and right now, honestly, Kentucky is right there in the middle of the SEC, and I think Wolverine fans, I know you have a lot of Wolverine folks. They won't like it, but I think Michigan's kind of like in the middle of the pack right now in the Big Ten. And then just to pile on just one more thing, CBS Sports, just put out their list of the ranking of the head coaches, and Stoops was at 22 and Jim Harbaugh was at 23. So they had Stoops ahead of Harbaugh. So, and of course, one of the things I do for Last Word, I do a bowl projections thing, and you have to do it whether it works out or not. I can guarantee you right now that first bowl projection, I'm going to have Michigan and Kentucky playing in some bowl game. I don't know which one it's going to be yet, but that is definitely going to happen. And I think people would love to see it. You go back a couple of years ago when Kentucky ended up going to the Citrus Bowl, they were being looked at heavily. I think it was for the Peach Bowl, and they could have potentially played Michigan there because I think if you go back and look, the two schools only played once, I think, and it was like in the 1920s, and Michigan won like 70-3 or something. But anyway, it was just a comment, and Coach Merrill was just, hated to see, Coach Clinkscale go because he has done a remarkable job here. But yeah, he got that little dig in at Michigan, and everybody, and you could just see it on Twitter, it was just like, pointing out all these stats, Michigan's won blah 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 games, Kentucky's Michigan's done all this and done all that, and then then of course somebody had to say, and pardon me folks, I'm not trying to be that Kentucky and Michigan have beaten Ohio State the same number of times the last few years, even though obviously Kentucky hasn't played Ohio State, but anyway, but you know how Twitter is, it became a big thing for a while, and everybody, the Michigan fans were upset and the Kentucky fans just all kind of laughed about it. But yeah, it was just, it was just a funny comment. And if Vince Marrow, that's just the way, that's just the way he is. And if, Marrow has been offered jobs by a lot of schools, and so far he's turned them all down. And he would be a huge, he's kind of that one guy that I think Stoops, they need to do everything they can to hold on him. And so far they have, because, he has been the guy as far as recruiting. A lot of these players that you're seeing now is just, a lot of, Romero. But anyway, like I said, Coach Clinkscale had been hitting Michigan hard and going in and taking those players. And so they're like, well, let's just see if we can get him here. And so he took a job with Michigan. So that's how that all came about. So it's kind of a funny, thing, because you don't usually think Kentucky, Michigan in the same circles with football. So.
Yeah, like you say, there's no comparison between the all-time records and tradition. There's really not even a great comparison in the last 10 or 15 years. Michigan's been capable. They've underachieved. But if you look at what's happened, as you pointed out, in the last 3 to 4 years, Michigan still has a decided advantage. But where is it trending? And if you want to put where both of the programs stand and how they're doing right now, where you've got one coach who's looked at, meaning Kentucky, Mark Stoops, as a guy that's built a program and is trending in the right direction, versus a coach that's on the hot seat. And if he doesn't come through with whatever the magic number is, or the magic number of wins, or against which opponents, Ohio State, winning the Big Ten, whatever's in the mind of A.D. Ward Manuel there's just there's a whole different context and vibe to each program, and Michigan's is negative and Kentucky's is positive. So that evens out the statistical rundown.
Yeah, no, like I said, it was just a funny, just a funny in the moment comment that, got everybody stirred up. And like I said, historically, there's no comparison. But as you said, over the last 3 or 4 years, as you said, Kentucky's been a program that's been steadily declining. And, nationally, they're, as you said, as you pointed out, and many others, Michigan seems to be on a bit of a decline, to where, I think Harbaugh probably needs to have, my opinion, probably a 9 or 10 win season and a major bowl game this year, or, I don't know that they'll fire him, but, he definitely, the seat will be a whole lot hotter. That's for sure.
Kevin Mcguffey on the line with us from Last Word on College Football to break down Kentucky with a quarterback battle looming that will pick up, of course, the first week of August. And unfortunately for Cats fans, a major recruit who got away, at least for the time being. The commitment made to Rutgers, of all places, for Gavin Winsett, one of the top quarterbacks in the nation. Yeah. All right, Kevin, anything else we need to run down?
No, not really. I agree with your commenter here, though. I think Kentucky is definitely, I think definitely a dark horse. I think Georgia will probably reclaim the SEC East this year, but I think Kentucky and Florida are going to be right there, and it could come down to that game. I think it's a little later this year. Like for the last few years, Kentucky and Florida have always played in like the second week of the season, which, for Kentucky fans drives everybody crazy because in the old days, now you could say this is when Kentucky was beating Florida. They used to always play in November. Like Florida would have to come up here in November and play, and that's when Kentucky was, doing a little bit better against them. But like I said, and then I think Missouri is going to be right there too. Maybe, I haven't even thought about projections for the SEC, but I'd probably have Georgia, then Kentucky, Florida, Kentucky, and then Missouri, and then Tennessee, South Carolina, Vandy maybe in the East. But yeah, like I said, we're just I just did a recap. I did a recap of the draft, and then I had a post looking at next year's draft. Kentucky had 6 players taken this year, is the most in modern draft history, the most since 1979. And depending on how things fall out, you could have as many as 10, possibly 10 guys taken next year. And that a lot of that has to do with Wan'Dale Robinson and Chris Rodriguez, whether or not they, decide to come back to school, or if they, if they have the kind of years that people are thinking, they both could definitely put their names in the draft, as Lynn Bowden did after his junior year. But yeah, we're just, there's a lot of excitement. I think, they just announced today that they're going to have, as many of the schools are doing now, Kentucky will have full attendance at Kroger Field. So, last year it was limited to 12,000, I think it was. And so, Kroger Field holds 61. So that'll be a huge thing. Kentucky has a great home schedule this year because they've got Florida, they've got Tennessee, they have LSU, Missouri, a lot of good games this year. I think it's a really good. I think the schedule sets up really well for them. That the potential is there to have a year like 2018. Now it's just a matter of going out on the field and doing it. So, but yeah, I think I think we've covered everything. So.
All right, everyone, check out Kevin's work and everybody else there at Last Word on College Football. Kevin, we always appreciate you stopping by, breaking down the Cats for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on again. I appreciate it and look forward to doing it again soon.
All right, Kevin Mcguffey, Last Word on College Football, talking Kentucky, whom I always pick to beat Florida. They're at home this year, so you can probably, I believe it was Fred, you can save that comment and probably use it again when I most likely will be picking Kentucky to beat Florida in September, the second or third week of the season. All right. We did have a caller standing by. I apologize to Reasonable Gump, but he jumped off the line, and I understand that. Don't want to stay on the line forever, but we had Kevin scheduled for 8:45 Eastern. All right. What else is going on? So I wanted to run down the sporting news top 25 and see if anything was out of line or appeared out of line. I would like to see, to be honest, some things get out of line in college football to create some buzz, to create some talk, and to make things interesting. As I stated, let's see, is that the article there? There we go. As I stated off the top, the product on the field is exceptional. Game day is exceptional. Saturday is crazy good. Thursday night, Friday night, don't disappoint when there are multiple games. You guys know from following me during the season, for those of you who have been here long enough, that we have an amazing time on college football Saturdays. That's when this channel really gets humming. And unfortunately, I got to figure out what to do the rest of the year that keep people's interest. But during the, I got to credit all of you. I think people show up during college football season, and particularly on Saturdays, but throughout college football season, show up to this channel that don't show up the rest of the year. And of course, there's sports fans who then gravitate to the NBA or baseball or golf or whatever else they want to do throughout the year. Or they're just college football fans that just want to show up for the games, and that's great. But this channel just gets revved up before college football season and throughout the season, especially on Saturdays. Just we're at fever pitch in terms of volume of calls and interest and engagement in the live chat and the numbers online. And we have a great time, and the product is exceptional. And we just don't even have enough time on Saturdays to talk about all the great games that we just watched. And college football, the on-field product delivers. It's exciting. It's a great, great product. And are they as good as the NFL? Well, of course they're not as good as the NFL, but is the product better than the NFL? It could be argued. If you're just looking at who's better athletically on the field and who are better football players, well, that's not even a debate. There's a reason that only a small percentage of the college football players advance to the NFL. The NFL is a better product on the field. But if you take all of it in its totality, in regards to the bands and the cheerleaders and the experience and the vibe and the tradition and the pageantry and the rivalries and all of it, in addition to just the crazy aspect of the games, college football delivers on the field. The point that I was making at the start of this live stream is that most of the games that deliver the excitement are not the biggest games. The big games don't deliver the excitement most of the time. Yes, did Oklahoma and Georgia play a phenomenal Rose Bowl in the college football playoff a few years ago? Was the Georgia-Alabama national championship game scintillating? Yes. Some of the Alabama-Clemson national championship games of 15 and 16, phenomenal. Yes. But most of the best games in college football, the games that deliver the excitement and the intrigue, are played by the lower ranked to unranked teams. Most of them. So we've got a disconnect. The playoff games last year were pretty bad. The championship game, pretty bad. The games leading up to those games in the conference championship games, pretty bad. The Pac-12 championship game was boring. The Big Ten championship game, despite it being a 22-10 game, I think a lot of people are turned off by those kind of games. That didn't bother me. I like defensive struggles as long as it's defensive excellence and not offensive lack of production, ineffectiveness, incompetency. And I didn't feel that that was the case. The Big 12 championship game was good. The SEC was a good game. It looked better at the end than the actual game because Florida made a mad dash at the end, and the ACC was awful. So we are going to check out the Sporting News Top 25, and we're going to come across a list. Basically, it would be interesting if all of these various sites, including me, could deliver these top 25s, these preseason top 25 rankings, without any knowledge of the other top 25s. Because it basically seems as though everybody's falling, and this happens every year. It's groupthink. Everybody thinks those 5 teams are the best 5 teams, and they probably are. So you've heard me say it. I'm not going to spit out an opinion that's contrarian just to stir up clicks and get people to talk. and to rev up the channel. I'm not going to make some outrageous prediction or statement just to do it, to rile people up and get clicks. On the other hand, I'm not going to shy away from a contrarian opinion that I have that nobody else has. I'm going to state it the way I see it. So I'm probably, unless I just find something out there over the course of the summer in some team that I see a path that nobody else is seeing, I'm most likely going to have those 5 teams that everybody else has in the top 5. And my top 5, if not my top 10, is going to look like everybody else's. I would like to be able to forecast something different than that, but I'm not going to do it just to do it. I'm not going to pick Iowa to win the national championship just to do it. All right, got a call coming in. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's McD Sports Boy. How you doing?
McD, what's going on?
Not good. Not a good day.
It's not a good day.
Not a good day.
Uh-oh.
In all aspects, except the NFL team I cheer for. My team's getting their butts handed to them right now. The baseball team lost. And the thing that I called up to talk to you about involving the Maryland Terps has me upset because I don't know if you saw it today or not, but the television, which games are going to be on which networks, at least for the first few weeks, and some of the weeknight games,
yes,
is coming out. CBS already came out of theirs. 2 Maryland games got moved up to Friday. 2 Big Ten games. It's the game on the road against Illinois and the game at home against Iowa. And I'm not happy about that at all.
You don't like Friday night games?
Well, this is my 2 cents on it. I don't like Power 5 games on Friday night or Thursday night. I just like the group of 5 on those nights.
I get your point. I've kind of gotten into that groove too, where I expect myself just to watch Power 5 games on Saturday because a lot of those Houston SMU kind of games are on Thursday and Friday night, and I am able to catch up with the group of 5 and be able to become better educated on the group of 5 on Thursday and Friday. And there might be 1 or 2 North Carolina State, Wake Forest type games on Thursday or Friday, but especially on Friday, those have typically been even more so reserved for the group of 5. But the one positive note I would give you, McD, for your program is that when a team that doesn't get a whole lot of national attention because there are so many games being played on Saturday plays on a Friday night, people are going to watch anybody that wants to watch college football on a Friday night is going to watch your team play.
And I get that. And but in my opinion, I just think as a Power 5 program, the University of Maryland should not be playing on Friday night. And that game against Illinois has me a little bit nervous now on the road against Illinois on Friday night.
You're nervous about the Friday Illinois game, but not the Saturday Illinois game.
No, because I'm always because we're on the road on weeknight. Short week, have to go on the road about halfway across the Big Ten landscape.
So, McD, you should know me well enough by now to know that I'm going to challenge that in that you might be right. You might be right. There might be validity to what you're telling me, that it's more possible that Maryland gets upset, if that in fact is an upset, on the road against Illinois because it's a weeknight game, a Thursday or Friday night game, than the probability of that happening on a Saturday. There might be reason in there. It's never been statistically proven to me that has anything to do with it. It's just kind of a feel.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and I kind of agree with you on that. I'm just saying I've seen Clemson. I've seen it happen to Clemson before. I've seen it happen to many teams that was a better team go on the road. Oklahoma State is another one in 2011. Go on the road, and lose on a Friday night or Thursday night to a team that's supposed to be lesser than them. Illinois, I mean, they're probably going to be more excited week 0 against Nebraska with that game in Champaign. So I'm not. So I mean, I still think we win at the end, but I mean, I wish that game was Saturday. I wish Maryland just played on Saturdays. Like last season was great, even though it was a short season because we played on Saturdays. But I do think we have a better shot against Iowa on a short week, though, at home in College Park. So
they're going to play Iowa at home on a Friday night. I'm looking forward to that game.
I can't even remember the last time Iowa played not on a Saturday.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know that they've ever played. Oh, I'm sure that they have in their history at some point. But yeah, Iowa's not been pulled to these Thursday and Friday games like other teams have in the Big Ten. You're right.
So, I do think that Iowa-Maryland game, even if it was on a Saturday, I do think that game could be a really good game either way. Because I know, and Maryland should be the underdog going into that game, but I just think that Maryland's going to turn some heads this year. I really do.
Oh, I know you do.
One other quick thing, Mark, before you let me go. I saw that you posted a video of one of my calls from a few weeks back on the Clemson channel.
Okay. McD, excuse me because I'm posting so many videos. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure cool I did. So what was it?
I'm cool with it.
Well, you're on here live, so you should be cool with it. All I did is repost it somewhere else, so it's out there anyway. So what did you have to say about Clemson that I posted on the Clemson channel? And I'm sure as soon as you tell me, I'm going to remember.
When I said that if Clemson loses to Georgia, they should be eliminated unless certain circumstances. And the
I thought I'd get some clicks for that.
Were hilarious.
I was looking for some clicks, and so as soon as you said that sparked something in me, and I thought, okay, this may get some Clemson folks riled up that they shouldn't be in the playoff if they lose to Georgia. So I thought I'll have to check out what kind of response that has gotten.
Yeah, I mean, so I just want to mention that. I mean, it got some funny responses in that comment section, but just want to hop on here and basically say I'm Maryland. 2 of their games are now on Friday, which disappoints me in the Big Ten. I mean, if there were non-conference games, like a game against Kent State or Howard, I wouldn't really care. We even got West Virginia game week 1, but I just feel like conference games should be on Saturdays no matter what. But anyways,
I wonder how we would do. Well, absolutely, McD. I was just gonna wonder here for a second how a Maryland channel would do if that would be my next selection to do a Maryland channel.
I'll be on there every day.
Do a Maryland channel. So yeah, McD, you're welcome anytime, but especially if you're going to come on here and say something controversial that I can post, just make sure it's concerning one of the teams that I've got a team channel for.
Okay.
All right, McD.
Okay, thanks for my call.
Always appreciate it, man. Have a good one. All right. Got David Greenshield on here. David, welcome to the Voice of College Football.
As always, it's a pleasure to speak with the man that gives college football its voice, the one and only Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
David, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm excellent. I got a chance. I kind of caught the tail end of your win total last post. Didn't get a chance to call in. I think I just missed you the other day. Interesting time having it at noon, Mark. But I caught kind of the tail end of it.
I'm still trying to figure some things out.
No, I hear you.
I'm trying out some different times.
Okay. No, I get that. I wanted to ask you about a few specific win totals and get your thoughts. I didn't quite get a chance to hear your thoughts on these. So let me run a few by and see what you think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I had saw Kentucky's win total at 6.5. Is that what you would see?
I don't have it in front of me, and I've got to credit my buddy Steve Dace because he's the one that sent me the win totals. I didn't know that the win totals were being released. Most of my the folks that keep me updated on all these sorts of things are you guys and people like Steve Dace. So he sent me, he said, here are the win totals that came out today. I'm like, oh, that's good. And unfortunately, what before we dive into the individual teams, what unfortunately happens at times on here when I make that a topic for a call-in show for in particular is that I never really get around. I do about 2 or 3 teams, and then people start calling me about other things, and we never really get a handle on it. So I am going to need to go through those later and post some kind of video when I get a feel for what I like and what I don't like. So let me look those up. But you've got Kentucky at 6.5, huh?
I'd seen 6.5, Mark. And if you can confirm that, that's one I would be all over, because I think that, especially I think with a bowl, is that 6.5 too? That translates over to the bowl game too, right?
No,
or is that just regular season?
That's a regular season number.
Oh, that's just regular.
Because you don't know if they're going to play in a bowl game, and if they do, you don't know who they're going to play. That's just a regular season number.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, with the hook there, I'd still be confident that they're going to go 7-5. I still think that's a 7-5 football team. So I would be leaning towards that one. I tell you one that I'm really looking at. I don't know if you can confirm this one as well, Mark. Is the 8.5 on LSU. I have a funny feeling this could be a comeback year for LSU. What do you think about those two?
Kentucky 6.5 confirmed. LSU 8.5. Yes.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
Well, I love that Kentucky number. I love the over on Kentucky.
Are you going to pick them again, Mark?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to. I don't know if I can really reason that Georgia's the number 1 team in the country, but Kentucky's going to win the SEC East. I don't know that I can put those two things together. So Kentucky, we know that they play Louisville. And here's the thing, is that, of course, with only 8 SEC games, you're looking at 4 games that most teams in the SEC can handle.
Right.
The majority of teams obviously go out there and schedule a really good opponent, Auburn, Penn State, Alabama, Miami, etc. But most of them, especially Kentucky's been in this category, they don't go out of their way to schedule a tough non-conference game at Kentucky. When is the last time? Because they play Louisville. So Louisville's all over the map.
Right.
Louisville's all over the map,
right.
But Kentucky's generally won the majority of games against Louisville in recent years and should be a slightly better team this year. But I can guarantee you that the other 3 non-conference games, they're wins. I'm going to pull it up right now. It's here. But I guarantee it's the MAC and it's an FCS and it's somebody else in the group of 5. So they got most likely 3 wins for sure, 4 wins most likely right there. And Vanderbilt's awful.
Right. Yeah, Vanderbilt's bad. I personally think that's, 7 I think is right out there. I'm looking at, because I think Florida's a gettable game this year. What do you think?
I think it's winnable too. They're at home.
Right.
What would be a bit interesting for me to divulge, but I can't, is Steve Day sent me these win totals, and I'm sworn to secrecy because he has his win projections there that he has yet to release. So I'm not privy to do that, but I'm looking at those, finding those somewhat interesting against the line. But so LSU's at 8.5, of course. The over's 9.
Yeah.
They've got Alabama. They do have Texas A&M. They've got
right.
Auburn, whom they should be better than. Florida,
I
of
agree.
course, is their one game. I believe that their two non-division games are Florida and Kentucky. I believe the Kentucky game's
But they
on the
avoid
road.
Georgia,
Pardon me?
right? They avoid Georgia. They don't get Georgia. I
No
believe,
Georgia.
this year, which I think is big. That's why I was looking at that. They didn't get Georgia, even if they lose to Texas A&M and Alabama, which I think they probably will. Texas A&M might be a little bit closer, but a lot of people are hyping up Texas A&M. I still wonder about that a little bit, but yeah, I think 9-3 is very doable.
So I found it interesting that LSU was only in the early lines a 3-point favorite at UCLA. I don't get that. I hope that line holds because I'm going to bet LSU. They're just physically so much better than UCLA. I don't see where that's going to be. I think it'll be a decent game, but I just don't see where that's going to be 34-31. I just don't really see that.
Well, what did Dace have UCLA in his power rankings, like 15 or 16 or something like that, Mark?
Well, again, he would go through the roof if you called them power rankings. They're not power rankings.
Okay, my bad.
Because he even challenged me, even though I didn't use the term power rankings. He said, you're treating them like power rankings. They are potential rank. They are total team talent rankings. They are the potential of the team. Okay. And I couldn't really nail him down on that in regards to Cal was 14, UCLA was 15. So because the basis of this ranking is the recruiting classes. The recruiting classes largely determine where those rankings are going to be because they're ranking the ceiling of the roster. Well, Cal does not recruit in the top 15 in the nation, anywhere close to that. And then for a team to ascend to that level that doesn't recruit that highly, in my mind, would have to be a Wisconsin, where they recruit around the 35 range, but they overachieve and produce these top 10 to 15 teams. Therefore, I could see where they would raise because his classic example is Tanner Morgan was maybe not even a 3-star. And he, of course, goes out and throws 30 touchdown passes. And so he elevated his ranking to like a mid 4-star because he proved that he was no longer the 3-star. He was a mid 4-star. Well, I can understand that out of, let's say, Wisconsin would be, to me, the classic example of recruiting in the 30s and 40s and playing like a top 15 program most seasons. So I could see that, but Cal's not done that. So I don't know where this number 15 ranking comes from. That's what I was trying to pin him down on, and I couldn't quite get it.
Yeah, usually with like a team like that, it's like we were talking about Minnesota coming into this year. At least like with Minnesota, you saw a really good year in 2019. You saw some players coming back. So, he uses the term developmental programs to describe those certain programs that don't recruit very high. And, if you have a team like that has a good year and then that has a lot of players coming back, even though they're not recruiting really high, you can say, oh, well, hey, they're coming off a successful season. They've got players coming back. Then you can kind of justify a top 15, 16 ranking or maybe even slightly higher.
Well, I think a lot of Justin Wilcox as a coach, but just the sheer wins and losses tell us that while he has produced basically 500 football at Cal, his in-conference Pac-12 record, and this is arguably the worst conference in the Power 5, is 11-20.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Hey, Mark, on Kelly, is this make or break for Kelly, you think?
I would think so. This is 3 bad seasons, and the first 2 were deplorably bad seasons. 3-9, 4-8. Again, the COVID year, they played much better. I don't know how much you got to see them last year, but they were. I don't want to use the term significantly, decidedly better. They were a pretty good football team last year, but they still only went 3-4. But they played well in most of those games. It will be intriguing to see what they can do this year.
I'm a firm believer. I'm a kind of playing baseball. It's a 3-strike and you're out kind of thing for me, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If I don't have some kind of food on my plate by year number 3, at least like an 8-4, maybe a 7-5, show me some kind of sign of life.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I got to think, exit visas are imminent. Let me get to the Big Ten team. Well, I think you're down on them, and I've got mixed views on them. And I think the early game is going to tell, and that's Penn State.
Yeah.
Because their win total, I believe, is at 9, right?
Penn State's at 9.
That one I was okay. That I just don't know. I mean, this to me is a big year for Franklin. I think he gets a pass on last year. He's got some equity built up with 3 11-win seasons. The last Big Ten team not named Ohio State to win the Big Ten is Penn State. I don't know. That's one of those seasons. This could go either way for Penn State. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in terms of being able to achieve what we saw between 2016 and 2019, that type of program, I don't think that they're going to collapse and be an awful team, but James Franklin was not hired, and Penn State football does not exist to be 8-4, and
right,
and not be competitive to win Big Ten championships and appear in playoffs, of which they generally did in 16, 17, 18, and 19. They were an Ohio State win away 3 times, and obviously, they arguably could have been placed in the playoffs in 16, but now that they were decidedly, even though they were still a good team in 19, they were decidedly not in Ohio State's league. They were a good team, but Ohio State's just separated itself. That's all there is to it. And Penn State has stayed flat-footed and maybe regressed. We'll see how much 2020 was legit. I do give them a bit of a pass as being a team that really got hit hard with opt-outs and with the Journey Brown situation. But Penn State, I don't have the schedule in front of me in regards to who they have to face in the West, although their first game of the season, not just Big Ten game, is Wisconsin.
Right. Well, I think the interesting game is that Auburn game, Mark, for both programs.
Sure.
I think, I want to see with the new coach at Auburn, and obviously Bo Nix any better of a quarterback than we've seen from some inconsistent play over the last couple years. And then, the games in Happy Valley, I think this is, I actually, I kind of look at these, I take some Big Ten pride here too, kind of looking at that Big Ten SEC kind of matchup. And, I'd like to see the Big Ten show well in that game. So, from that perspective, I probably will be rooting, pretty hard for Penn State. But don't you think that's going to be revealing? I would say for both teams.
Oh, sure. That's going to be intriguing to see. Then to kind of make that correlation, although it's going to be overblown, but to make that correlation and that transitive property of, okay, Penn State just beat Auburn by 2 touchdowns. Now they're coming back to the Big Ten and they're not playing so well and they're losing a few games. Maybe the Big Ten's pretty good, or vice versa. Penn State just lost against Auburn, but they're challenging for the Big Ten championship. And we make a little bit too much out of one game, but that's all we've got to go on at that point in the season. I don't know that the SEC and the Big Ten get together other than that game. Isn't that it? That must be it.
I don't think this year. Yeah.
So that's all we've got. Scheduling's a mess, David. That's ridiculous. The Big Ten and the SEC play one game.
I would like to see it more. Remember the last time? I mean, Wisconsin did beat LSU at Soldier Field a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's the last time I really remember the SEC and Big Ten getting together in non-conference. I think Les Miles was actually fired shortly thereafter that. But yeah, that was in 16, so it's been a few years. Yeah, I'm with you, Mark. I think if you're the Big Ten and you want to compete against the best, I think they should schedule more of those games other than having to wait for like the Capital One Bowl or something, or playoff possibly.
Yeah.
So, hey, I wanted to get you on real quick before I let you go, and I want to make sure that I quoted you correctly. Did you say that Ohio State fans, if the team up north hires Matt Campbell, should be? Did you use the term scared, Mark?
Oh, well, yeah, I shouldn't have used the term scared. I said what I was. Okay, scared is ridiculous. Okay, when you're
please.
okay, so David, when you're on here as much as I am talking all the time, yeah, so some terms may slip from time to time that aren't precisely what should have been said. I was also placing that more in the context of a certain age group of Ohio State fan, let's say that's 35 and older, that knows what it's like to lose to Michigan on a fairly consistent basis, that there's more fear, for lack of a better term, not true fear, but in a football sports fandom sense, fear, knowing that, okay, that school, that program is capable of winning this series. They're capable of being the better football program. I don't think your typical Ohio State fan who's under a certain age even looks at Michigan thinking that they have what it takes. Well, they certainly don't right now, but they have the potential. There are certain schools across the country, as you well know, in certain football programs that just don't even have the potential. Vanderbilt doesn't have the potential to win the SEC.
Okay. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. I would never use that term because I got to see it to believe it from my perspective, and I think most Ohio State fans got to feel the same way. But I will say this. I will give him one thing. I do think Matt Campbell is the best hire that could be out there. Although, I will say this, and Gase remembers this better than anybody. At the end of the 2007 season, Rich Rod was the hottest hire in college football, too. So, there is that.
Well, let's also understand, David, that the Ohio State-Michigan series, although it's been lopsided, let's understand that, again, people have short memories. They treat these...
I get it, Mark.
They treat these last two games like this has been going on for 20 years. 56-27 and 62-39 have not been going on for 20 years. There have been some razor close games. There's been, Devin Gardner throwing the ball into the end zone to win the game and beat an undefeated Ohio State team in 2013. There's been the measurement in 2016. There's been an extremely close game, a one-score game in 2012. I could go on down the line as you could.
Sure.
So I'm not saying every year has been like that prior to the last 2 years. There certainly was the Zeke Elliott blast them by 4 touchdowns in 2015 when they were a really good team, and some other Ohio State routes. Of course, once Jim Tressel was there against the likes of Brady Hoke and in particular Rich Rod, those games were not competitive, but it gets talked about like these 4 touchdown games have been going on for 20 years. And that's not the case. And also and this is to Ohio State's credit. I think some people are going to take this the wrong way. The gap between the two teams, therefore the two programs over this, what has it been, 18-year stretch, is not as big as people make it out to be. For most of that time, Ohio State has beaten Michigan teams that have been, again, I'm going to isolate Hoke and Rich Rod and take them out of it. But the end of Lloyd Carr's tenure and Jim Harbaugh's tenure, people have talked about Michigan football like it's been a joke. Well, I just think that Ohio State, to its credit, regardless of whether it's been Tressel or Meyer or Day, has found the recipe, has found the psyche and the mindset to really get that team to play to its optimum on that Saturday, while Michigan has taken the other turn. Like, there's no reason. This will be my last point to kind of extend the narrative, or the point that I'm trying to make, David, is that some of these scores, especially recently, the last 2 years, are the type of scores that Ohio State typically puts on Maryland or Illinois. But that's not been Michigan's team. They've been a 9-3 team. And Ohio State's losing occasionally to Purdue and Iowa, those types of teams. So this dominance in the win-loss column by Ohio State, it's somewhat of an aberration. Like,
it is. I would say that as far as the gap goes, they did catch us at a time. 15 and 19, Mark, when we did blow them out, were two of our most talented rosters. I think you'd probably agree with that, as long as you've watched Ohio State football as I have, or longer.
Sure.
15 and 19 might be the two most talented rosters.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of Cooper teams in the 90s could be close, but those would be the only teams I could put up against the 15-19 rosters, as far as just purely loaded with NFL player rosters. So, I do think from that perspective, we have produced two of the best rosters they've gone up against. So, but as
David,
always, a pleasure, Mark.
Hey, David, yes. I will just put a capper on our conversation, just because I backtracked on a few of the earlier discussion points that you brought up. Before I let you go, just want to circle back.
Sure.
UCLA plays LSU, Hawaii, and Fresno State outside of their Pac-12 schedule. So I'm not going to go through all the Pac-12 games, but it's a typical Pac-12 schedule. LSU, Fresno State, who's not going to be a pushover. UCLA's been losing those kind of games to the San Diego States of the world. And Hawaii's not going to be a pushover necessarily for what UCLA football's been the last 3 or 4 years. And then the other over-under that strikes me, David, Stanford, 3.5.
Oh, yeah.
3.5.
You have to think they can get to 4 wins.
I keep looking at this. 3.5?
Wow. Yeah, if David Shaw only wins 3 games, I think that there might be some issues in Palo Alto.
I would hope there are, unless they're just completely have lost any kind of a football pulse or standard there.
Well, as always, a pleasure, Mark. Buckeye Talk tomorrow?
Yes, we'll be on at 2 Eastern.
A pleasure, Mark. You take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate it. All right. Stanford, 3.5. I've looked at this 4 times, not believing that number is there. Stanford is at, okay, I had the schedule pulled up. Here we go. Interesting non-conference schedule, as is typical for Stanford. They go out, play people. Now, I'm not saying that these are giants in the sport, but they've got Kansas State, Vanderbilt, and the other non-conference game is, of course, Notre Dame. So they play Kansas State, Notre Dame, and Vanderbilt. So they've got no FCS games, no Group of 5 games, although Vandy could be classified as such. Wow. Stanford can't win 4 games? Like, this isn't easy money? I may have to open an account or find my password that I haven't used in 5 years to just put a few bucks on Stanford. Stanford can't win 4 games this year. They went 4-2 last year. Really? Stanford plays Kansas State in Arlington, Texas. That's an unusual neutral site game, because typically the neutral site games are the big games. Alabama, Miami, on down the line. And there are some lesser ones. Ole Miss and Louisville play on Labor Day night. They aren't necessarily marquee programs, but there's some cachet there. But Stanford and Kansas State, you wouldn't think would be the two type teams that they would throw into Jerry's world for a game. But that's where the game is. USC on the road, Vanderbilt on the road, UCLA at home, Oregon. So it's difficult. Out of the first 5 games of the season, they could be 1-4. And then they play Arizona State. They could be 1-5. Washington State, Washington, Utah, Oregon State, Cal, Notre Dame. I just can't believe that they can't reach 4 wins. That's a tough schedule. If this was a different offseason, I'd be doing scheduling rankings. But the response on those wasn't red hot. So and that takes a lot of time. But I typically have done schedule rankings, and that one would have ranked fairly high. All right, let me dive into the live chat. I've missed a bunch of comments, but the number is 860-499-3332. And keep in mind, again, please, if you shop on Amazon, use the link in the description section. It costs you no money. Additionally, just whatever you buy is what you buy. It no money additional to that. Doesn't cost you a penny. Doesn't cost you a dime. And it's the same shopping experience. You just go in through the link that we provide, and you're on Amazon. You're going to see like this hover helmet that I picked out about 7 years ago. It doesn't mean anything. Bypass it. Keep going. Shop and buy things on Amazon as you typically do. But please use the link that we provide in the description section of any of the videos. If you go to any of the videos, I have put Amazon in caps. Grab that link. Use the link. That would be phenomenal. If everybody who watches me that shops at Amazon would use the link, we might be here doing this for quite some time. All right. Also, we're on Patreon. We've got 47 folks on Patreon currently. We would love to have, I think, 4,000 would be great at some point. And I know that I need to deliver on my end of that and provide quality content. And we certainly have done that in the past, and we'll continue to do that. But it's 17 cents a day to support the channel and join us on Patreon. Live streams, watch parties, exclusive live streams per request. I remind my patrons of that. It's per request. I'm not just going to do live streams just for the hell of it. I will do live streams if you request a live stream. We will do one per week per request. Watch parties, my predictions. Whew. That in and of itself right there. I had somebody ask for my prediction record just yesterday. So I went into the archives and I compiled the numbers and sent them. This is for hopefully some type of opportunity. They wanted my prediction record. So I said, there's the good and the bad. There it is. There was a season about 4 years ago. I was like, really? Was I that bad? Okay. And then also, of course, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App contribute directly to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, you can just go to Mark Rogers TV. And what am I missing? voiceofcollegefootball.com. So here's the deal with our website. Go to the website. If you want a mask, you get a few more days to get a mask. I know that we're doing away with masks, and that's a great thing in this country. But hey, if you just want a mask for the next pandemic in 100 years, get yourself a mask, or just for keepsake memorabilia. It's a team mask of your choice. We've got 35 teams available. And then also just register for free. Just go to the top of the screen where it says register for free. Bam. And right now, you know, I'm fully transparent all the time in terms of what we've got available. You're going to see nothing there, but I want you to check out the website. So just as a fan of the channel and what we are building here, just check out the website. voiceofcollegefootball.com. Let me know what you think. And right now, we're just directing you to our channels. But we're going to provide so much more as we make our way through the summer. I'd like to put together a fantasy football league. I would like to put together some type of contests and standings concerning not just the fantasy football league that I want to make unlimited. And then also, in addition to that, some type of standings contest that we could put together with prediction records. So you guys give your predictions, match them up against mine. And those are the two things I have in mind. And another idea that is not fully vetted yet that I think would be a good one. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is Cole Converse.
Hey, Cole.
How are you doing, Mark?
I am doing just fine. I saw a number of your interesting comments on the live chat. I was going to address some of those. You had made a comment about the Iowa State line and a few other things. So I appreciate you contributing to the live chat.
Oh, yeah. You know, the topic that was kind of being brought up was one that was just kind of interesting enough where I kind of wanted to talk about it, over the phone. One of the things I've kind of noticed, I've been an Iowa State fan all my life. Like in 2014, Iowa State was losing by 3 touchdowns to Kansas. Like that's how bad it was. So we know all about like what it's like to be a losing program. And so I've kind of been able to see like what the losing programs have had problems with. And then and then I look at what Campbell's done and, so I kind of just want to address that and then kind of combine that with a lot of these big names and why a lot of these big brands, in my opinion, aren't winning right now. And I think I was talking with Scott into the live chat about Texas. The biggest reason why Texas doesn't win isn't because you don't have enough people making decisions for the football program. It's because you have too many people making decisions for the football program. The biggest reason why Campbell has been able to succeed is he's been able to have stability with his staff, keep them well compensated, keep them happy. And then he's also had a very good relationship with his athletic director, where essentially Matt Campbell has all like control of the football operations, except for like the legal and technicality aspect of things. So the university doesn't get in trouble with anything, which I think is pretty standard and pretty reasonable. At Texas, I've got friends down in like San Antonio and Austin that know some people who are boosters and stuff, and they all are pretty uniform in their opinion when they tell me that the biggest problem with Texas is they got all sorts of boosters that are trying to make all sorts of decisions that should really be up to, a football coach. At some point, when you hire somebody, you got to trust the guy that you hire to actually make a lot of the decisions as far as being able to be successful and win football games. And I think, I was listening to you talk about Michigan with Steve Dace, who, by the way, interesting story. About 15 years ago, he was in Iowa, Steve Dace, and he would be on a show called Cyhawk Talk with a guy named John Miller. I don't know if you know who he is. So people in Iowa are very familiar with Steve Dace. So it's kind of interesting seeing you on his show. But, I almost wonder what's kind of going on at Michigan there. I don't know if it's all the same problems that Texas has, but I feel like there's something wrong with either the assistant's ability, the administrative and coaching relationship there. You know, you see the same problem with USC where you got a bunch of, you know, boosters and people saying Fry Clay Helton. The AD's trying to be patient and stuff. You know, and USC was kind of ugly last year, but they did go 5-1. And maybe the Pac-12, you know, Pac-12's been down for some years, but I do think that the point I want to hammer home is these people hire coaches. At some point, when are, you know, people who think they're higher ups going to trust the person they hired to, you know, make decisions in the prime moments? I guess that's what I'm saying.
So when the Texas job became open, as it was a few years ago, when Tom Herman was hired to replace Charlie Strong, I think it's pretty well known among college football nation that unlike any other job in the country, and you mentioned USC, so there is some parallel there. I think Texas takes it to another degree, even outside the university, where people get involved in state legislature and other places, people of high authority within the state. And you don't hear that when there are job openings at other big time blue blood programs. It's about money and winning. And those are the factors we're talking about with the other programs. But with Texas, they have some serious issues that are obviously affecting the on-field performance, because it's not the recruiting. The recruiting's been, not that it hasn't been flawed in some aspects, but it's been good enough to win 9 or 10 football games a year at least. But somebody needs to go in there and clean house and restructure the way things, and I don't know that any one person has that kind of power or would have that kind of guts to go in and set some people straight and look people in the eye and say, you're no longer going to be involved. You're no longer going to be involved. We don't care what you have to say, because there's just too much money and political power being traded back and forth, and too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say. That's always going to be a part of the way football business is conducted in the state of Texas, and it's hurting the performance on the field, no doubt about it.
Well, right. And, you know, a lot of people are talking about, you know, and rightfully so right now, the dominance of the Southeastern Conference, you know, and people are worried about, oh, the Big 12 didn't have a lot of draft picks this year. And I get it. Part of it is the Big 12 had the highest percentage of people on teams returning this year. So when you have a higher percentage of people returning, you're going to have fewer people drafted. But, you know, Mark, there's a bigger systemic problem. The Texas schools have to step up for the Big 12, not only to catch up to the SEC, but also kind of take away a lot of that talent that they're letting get out of Texas and into the SEC. Well, heck, even that Quinn Evers is going to Ohio State. He's from Texas. I mean, the Texas schools have not been adequate in the Big 12. And, you know, I think if the Texas schools were more adequate, with, you know, like Campbell being there, like, sure, it'd present more challenges, but I think if Iowa State could, if they kept Campbell and they had all those other schools performing well, you know, you kind of enhance the reputation of the Big 12 a little bit. I think that overall benefits everybody in the conference, including an Iowa State. And I think it would help them be able to get better recruits. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the 5-year average of the recruiting rankings for Iowa State is on par with Kansas. And you look at Kansas and Iowa State, and the results are startling, the difference in, you know, comparing the two. And, you know, Iowa State beat 3 teams last year that ranked in the top 12 of the recruiting rankings from the year before. Only Alabama had more such wins in 2020. So, I mean, that, with the right coaching and the right culture in college football, it's not impossible to punch above your weight. And, but I just think that not only for the health of parity in the big, for the Big 12 versus the SEC, but just overall in college football in general, I think the Texas schools have to step up, and it starts with Texas. And, I know Gary Patterson at TCU's had a couple down years, but I think, I think that Duggan's a pretty good quarterback. I think they'll be decent this year. But, a lot, that Josh Pate did a segment about 2 months ago about why all of the non-blue blood teams secretly hate Iowa State. I don't know if you had the chance to see that at all, but basically the non-blue blood teams have been saying for years, oh, we can't win because we don't, get enough money, or we just can't get the talent, or, this or that. And what Pate was saying was essentially Iowa State basically has busted all of those excuses that a lot of athletic directors make. And it's causing a lot of people to be like, well, wait a minute. Maybe we're not performing up to par, not because of these excuses, but maybe it's because we haven't made very good hires, or we haven't established a good culture, or we don't have good relations between the athletic department and the coaching staff and the players. Maybe it's a lot more serious of a problem than we realize. And I think what you could see in a lot of these programs is a lot of non-blue blood teams that are, I'm trying to find a good comparison here. I don't know, like a Purdue or Mississippi State, teams that can be good from time to time, but struggle. I think you could see a lot of athletic directors and coaches possibly be prematurely fired, because a lot of these people are going to be like, well, I mean, you're making excuses for why we can't get this done.
Sure.
Iowa State recruits has recruited the last 5 years.
Sure.
On level with Kansas.
Yes, they have. So
and
let's though set the record straight on that. I think that narrative, I get his point and it makes sense, but let's not go to an extreme on this. So let's understand what Iowa State has achieved and what they have yet to achieve. So when you bring up Ole Miss and Mississippi State, just in the last 10 years, both of those programs have looked very similar to Iowa State on the field. They've achieved as much, if not more, in Ole Miss's case than Iowa State has. Ole Miss has had produced top 10 teams that have won a Sugar Bowl and played in a New Year's Six game against TCU. So they at times have been able to elevate to that level. Mississippi State played in the Orange Bowl and won 10 games in 2014. So the thing I will say about Iowa State, it's extremely impressive what Matt Campbell has done and is in the process of doing to this point. But let's not overstate it, because it has yet to be sustained. Because up until last year, and again, he's taking a 2 or 3 win program, and you outlined where you were in 2014 versus Kansas, 3 touchdowns worse. And all anybody has to do is go through any time after Seneca Wallace all the way up until a couple of years ago, and it was 2-10, 3-9, 4-8 repeated over and over and over and over. So he's done an exceptional job. And so I'm on the record many times as stating that it's exceptional what he's done. And to your point, the recruiting rankings are in the 50s and low 60s. They're not great. So the development of the program and the players has been exceptional. And the I look at it in 3 ways in regards to player development. Is number one, you sign as talented of players that fit your systems as possible. Then you develop them. You develop them in the weight room. You develop them as football players, as students, as smart football players. Then number 3, you prepare them for game day and you prepare them to play a game. But they're coming off a Fiesta Bowl win, a 9-3 season. Before that, Matt Campbell did a great job elevating them to a couple 8-5s and 7-6s. And now they went 9-3. They did lose the Big 12 championship game. They played a decent Oregon team and won that decidedly. But for them to elevate from that, which is like, I know they finished in the top 10 last year. I don't know that they were a top 10 team, but regardless, I had them ranked in the top 10 as well, just going by the results. To elevate from that place, first of all, they haven't repeated that over and over. They've only done it once. They didn't finish in the top 25 any of those other seasons. So I think he's going overboard in regards to this has yet to be established. We might be seeing it established, but it hasn't been established. Iowa State's only had one top 25 team, and that was last year's team. And so it's not like they've reached that elevation and they've stayed there. They've established nothing to date, except for they're no longer 3-9, 4-8. And then to elevate from where they're sitting right now, or where we think they're sitting, to a playoff team or a team that can win playoff games, that's another excessive leap.
Well, I'll just say this. Now that I think about it, probably Ole Miss is not the greatest example, because remember when Hugh Freeze was there was, and okay, yes, put an asterisk by it, but I mean, weren't they having like the number 2 or number 1 ranked recruiting classes in the nation some of those years?
People think they were. They weren't. If you go back, it wasn't. They were recruiting and signing number 1 players at certain positions. Yes, they were. We could run through Laramie Tunsil and Laquan Treadwell, et cetera. Yes.
Well, so that's why, I was trying to come up with like names, kind of thinking on the fly, and that probably wasn't a very good example, because, frankly, in those times, Ole Miss and, even Mississippi State, their recruiting rankings, have always been significantly higher than where we're at right now, at Iowa State. And, I'm not trying to say that, when I'm talking about how Campbell's turned it around, like, oh, we're, going to be a perennial playoff team every year. But I guess what I am saying is, there are a lot of teams that do make a lot of excuses for why they're not winning. And a lot of these excuses, really, I don't know how valid they are. Now, with respect to Iowa State too, and who knows, maybe this doesn't mean a whole lot, because Oklahoma has won 6 straight Big 12 titles. In the last 4 seasons, Oklahoma's won the most Big 12 conference games. Iowa State is 2. And they're ahead of Texas right now with, recruiting rankings that are on par with Kansas. Now, I'm hoping we will see, like in the 2022 class, maybe coming off of a New Year's 6 win, that maybe Iowa State's recruiting ranking, I'm going to be realistic here. Like Matt Campbell, even if like Matt Campbell is like a lifer at Iowa State, which who knows, he might be, he might not be. But Iowa State's never going to recruit in, to the level of Oklahoma or Texas, or, be in the top 5 or top 10. I'm hopeful that maybe one year, or we can get to the point where maybe we're recruiting in the top 25, top 30. Maybe that's even overly optimistic. But, I know Iowa State's not going to get the cream of the crop, like highly, highly ranked recruiting classes. I mean, I'm trying to be realistic with that. But, I think the point is, you're seeing an example with Iowa State, even with talent levels that suggest that you should be on levels with Rutgers or Oregon State or, some of the bottom feeders that, sure, you do need, if you want to win national championships, you're going to have to get more talent. And Iowa State, if they want to ever compete for a national championship, is going to need to recruit better. So the point I'm making is, like, I do think that there are a lot of people that kind of tend to make excuses for why they're not winning and arguments that really don't hold a lot of water. I guess that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, so the resources and the recruiting footprint and all of that Iowa State has is no better and probably worse than a lot of the teams that you're citing that continue to lose year after year after year. Illinois, Rutgers, Maryland. Maryland actually has a nice recruiting footprint in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia. They should recruit well, and they actually do based on the recruiting rankings, but they just never win anything. Oregon State, Arizona, others that have been bad for a period of time. So that point is well taken. I'm just trying to state that because of where Iowa State is currently projected to place in this coming season, and obviously that has yet to be accomplished, that basically there's only one season that they've really elevated to, let's say, a top 10 standing. For as good as those other years were, and they were extremely impressive considering where they were coming from, they still didn't even finish in the top 25.
No, and that's true. And, I actually think a lot of the success from 2020 came in large part from the failures of 2019. In 2019, Iowa State lost 3 games by a combined 4 points. They lost every close game you could imagine. And certainly when you look at who wins the close games, who loses the close games, it's not all, 100%, luck or 100% skill. But I do think it is more an art and a skill than sheer luck. And I don't think it was bad luck that Iowa State was losing all of those close games in 2019. I think, I tend to see that, not always, but I would place my bets that in a close game, an experienced team is probably going to beat a more youthful team. And I just think that the growing pains and the experience, kind of help with that. And I'm kind of wanting to transition this into Ohio State from the experience thing. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I think it's more, and I think you've seen me say this on your live chat before. I think it's more likely Ohio State loses at Minnesota than it is that they lose at home to Oregon. I just look at the first game being on the road. Minnesota, I believe, is one of the 5 top teams in the country as far as experience returning, experienced quarterback. I mean, you can ask Penn State if, TCF, how tough TCF Bank is to play at. Now Minnesota will have to get significantly better on their rushing defense than, the 2020 season. But, early in the season, especially, I look at, the experience versus the inexperience. And I see Ohio State, they got, a full buffet of, wide receiver options to throw to. But they got a young quarterback who's never started a college football game. I'm assuming they're going with the freshman, Stroud.
Well, regardless of who they go with, none of them have ever thrown a pass.
Right. And, I had the same conversation with Oklahoma fans in 2020. And I'm not saying because I was right in 2020 that I'm magically going to be right all the years. But I just said, that Rattler, it'll be his first road game he's ever played against a very experienced quarterback. I expect the Cyclones to beat Iowa State or beat Oklahoma in Ames. I just think that when you have a freshman inexperienced quarterback, not always. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is an example. But if I'm playing the odds are, especially early in a season, a young quarterback is going to have growing pains that a fan base especially doesn't necessarily expect. And I think if Ohio State could survive that first game at Minnesota, I mean, teams, especially inexperienced teams, improve a lot from game 1 to 2. I mean, I personally think they'll club Oregon in week 2, but we'll see what happens. I could see the Ohio State team kind of taking off like a semi truck, where a little bit slow initially, but as time goes on, they just kind of get better and better. And I wouldn't want to play them late in the season, but when I'm saying all this, they could still wind up in the playoff. I don't know, but we'll kind of see what happens. I'm just saying that, if I'm a Buckeye fan, there might be a little bit more growing pains with a young quarterback than what maybe an average Buckeye fan would expect in 2021. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, there could be. But to your point, if you take one of the best rosters in the country, you take a capable coaching staff, then if they're as good as we believe, the coaching staff, then that team should be a much different team at the end of November than they were in September.
Absolutely. And, kind of going full circle, I think Ohio State is an example culturally for why they win. When Urban Meyer stepped down, I thought it was a very wise move to promote from within. I've seen it work at Ohio State. I've seen it work at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. I mean, if Campbell ever left one day, I think it would be smart for the athletic director, Jamie Pollard, to promote from within with the culture they've built. I've seen, and maybe I don't have a big enough sample, Mark, but I've seen that it tends to be a lot more successful when you have a good thing going. If you promote from within, then you try to, get the big name splash higher. But, maybe my sample size isn't big enough, but
I think the point that you're making makes a whole lot of sense, because if you have a dysfunctional situation like Florida State did before Mike Norvell and may still have, Michigan and some other places, then you want a guy to come in and change things. But if you're on a roll like Ohio State and Oklahoma have been on, why disrupt things? Why not take somebody, if you can spot somebody who's showing themselves to be the football mind and to be the leader of an organization that you believe can take it on, then why not elevate them from within? Because you can keep the structure in place. Everybody's comfortable with that person. They know the leadership style. They know that person. You already have everything in place. They're most likely going to make small adjustments just to fit their personality and their vision. But at the same time, you're going to keep everything in place. And as you've noted, at Oklahoma and Ohio State, things have just kept rolling.
Yeah. And so the final thing I want to kind of ask you about, and then I probably better let you go for some other callers or some chats, to read. But, I've seen that football, they say they're all cognizant about, player safety and all that. And, they want to be all on top of that. One thing that really kind of surprises me, why are face masks not reviewable in college football.
Why are they not? Say the last word.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, like, if out in the game a guy grabs a face mask, like, I feel like it's not like a judgment call for most of these things. Like, when it happens, like, it either happens or it doesn't. Like, I've heard so many people in games, like, talk about, oh man, there's a missed face mask there. I feel like if that play was reviewable, you'd probably see less people, try to see if they can get away with that.
It's a good point. I can't argue with that, other than that severely slowing down these games even more and get us to a point of 5-hour football games, which is not nearly as important as player safety. I'm not saying that, but that would be the only drawback to that I can think of.
I would change, maybe you wouldn't agree with this, but I would change the system so a coach gets 2 challenges per game, and they're allowed to keep challenging until they lose twice. And then the last 2 minutes of each half, it goes to the booth. I mean, if a coach challenges 6 times.
Sure. If the coach is challenging and they're successful in their challenges, then obviously they've been wronged at those times. So they shouldn't have to pay the penalty for that and have those challenges taken away. I completely agree with that. All right, Cole. I appreciate the call.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, Mark.
Have a good night.
Yep. You too.
All right. Good call coming in right there. We'll read the super chat coming in from Scott Sheridan. If Texas beats Oklahoma this year, we will multiply this by 10. We're all Texas fans now. All right, Scott. Sounds good to me. All right. Also, Yakov had posted a super chat. Yakov, I appreciate that by so much. And he was making the point when I was putting into context the difference between Ohio State and Michigan over the past 20 years or so. Then Yakov did the math, and Ohio State's won 37 more games than Michigan. Yeah, I could sit here and recite the records for both teams over the past 20 years every year and tell you what happened exactly and how close the two teams were that particular year. Yes, it's decided. I'm just saying the gap has not been extreme. The gap has not been extreme in many periods of time. All right. We've discussed that many times before, and I'm sure we will in the future. But yeah. All right. I appreciate everybody that's jumped on the board. Unfortunately, we have been on here for over 2 hours, and I will be here all day tomorrow with records and with live streams. The next one coming up is Oklahoma at 11:30 a.m. So typically Oklahoma's on Friday, but Oklahoma's going to be Thursday at 11:30 a.m. on the Oklahoma channel. Ohio State at 2 p.m. Eastern time on the Ohio State channel. And then we've got Miami at 5 and 7 on the Miami channel. I apologize to whomever's on the line, but boy, I got to eat. I got work to do. We got to build this channel. So most of the building of the channel has to come when we're not here talking college football with you. So we will see you next time again. 4 live streams tomorrow. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Miami twice. See you then.